came from black women who said, well, a lot of the reason why we feel the pressure and the need to do this kind of thing with our hair to approximate someone else's beauty standard is because you men, so men, women, get your man, bring him up, bring him right in front of the TV set right there, right now. Men, those of you who aren't strong enough in your own black identity to understand the unfair pressure that you put on black women because your standard is somebody else's standard, is a Europeanized standard. Check your own dumb ass. Check your own misinformed ass. Because you contribute to the lack of health and the lack of self-esteem to your queens. Men.
It's self-hate.
Shun just said quietly, it's self-hate.
It's evident that he cares. What do you care about? Welcome to the Rock Newman Show. It's the Rock Newman Show.
Good evening, and welcome to this edition of the Rock Newman Show 2.0. We are glad to have you. Let me start this show by sharing a personal observation. A few years ago in Southern Maryland, I was driving home and I was behind a junior high school bus. Getting off of that bus in the neighborhood just prior to where I lived, I counted 12 black 12 or 13 or 14-year-old junior high school girls who got off the bus, and each of them had lengthy, store-bought hair. And it occurred to me as I was sitting there behind the bus and seeing them get off, a sadness came over me. And I just was perplexed by why these beautiful young ladies felt a need, or how they came to the reasoning that they would have this much store-bought hair. Subsequent to that, in the same neighborhood in Southern Maryland, my wife was in a grocery store, and I walked into a beauty store, if you will. It primarily was a store that sold Asian and Indian and any other kind of synthetic hair. And I again observed what it seemed to be a 34, 35-year-old mother, seeming like there was 3 kids. They looked to be about 10, 8, and 6. And I eardropped. And I heard the mother say at one point, wow, look at this hair. If you got this, and I don't know which of the kids she was talking to. I didn't have an angle to really see. But I heard her very clearly say, If you got this hair, then you could be really pretty. And my heart sank to my feet as someone who is concerned about our people and our survival. To think that a 36-year-old mother or a 86-year-old mother or a 26-year-old mother would say to their daughter, if you bought this store-bought hair, then you could be really pretty, as opposed to affirming that you're gorgeous, beautiful, and wonderful just like you are, your natural self. That was a few years ago. I posted about it on Facebook, and I got tremendous support, and I also got tremendous pushback. Pushback from people who said, it ain't your business. You're judging these brilliant little girls. They have, and there were many different reasons or excuses why it was okay. And I've thought about it all of these years. Today, as you are watching this show right now, I have a strong belief that somewhere as we deal with black women's hair today, that the vestiges and the power of white supremacy and its so-called standards of beauty is something that is so provocative, so prevalent, that our black sisters, whether they be as light as me or as blue, purple, black, have a sense that they're not too often, that they're not beautiful enough if they're not approximating European standards of beauty. I am convinced of that. I am convinced that's why it is a multi-billion-dollar hair industry that our people are spending their money on. There's a sense of a lack of self-identity of our natural selves and of your natural and beautiful self, that you have to go out and approximate someone else's standard of beauty. And then I saw this. This that I'm talking about is a book called My Beautiful Black Hair, 101 Natural Hair Stories from the Sisterhood by St. Clair Detrick-Jules, who is my guest tonight. Thank you so much for joining the Rock Newman Show 2.0.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure to have you. And I feel as if takes a certain amount of courage, understanding what's going on in our society and the controversy that is black women's hair. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Prior to you sitting at this table, I asked you the question. I said, in your previous interviews and the promotion of your book, have you gotten pushback from the diaspora, from black women, from white women, about whether or not you're qualified to talk about this, because you're not black as in the traditional sense? You have Caribbean heritage, and your hair is kind of different than some other people's hair. And tell me about that. Have you gotten that kind of feedback?
Yeah, I've had conversations with people about it, and I feel like the people who I've talked to have been really open about it, so it's not too much judgment, which I'm grateful for. I definitely understand, because there's so much colorism and there's so much texturism, even within our Black community, even within the natural hair community. You know, oftentimes looser curl patterns are, you know, privileged or seen as more beautiful than tighter curl patterns. And for me, actually, you know, here is my sister. I think I can show it, right? This is my sister, Chloe, if you can see this. And as you can see, she has a full
I'll show it from here, too. This is Chloe.
This is Chloe. And so she's the reason why I created the book, right? Because I saw, you know, for example, with my sister, that she has a much tighter curl pattern. You know, she has an afro, and she was being bullied at her school for wearing her afro. And I wanted her to know that her natural hair is beautiful, right? And so what I want to do with this book is uplift everybody, regardless of hair texture. But I definitely made sure to include very tight curl patterns in the book because I did want everybody to be represented, and I think it's true that oftentimes looser curl patterns like mine are sometimes privileged over tighter curl
What's
patterns.
her name again?
Her name is Chloe.
Chloe.
Yeah.
So tell me this. You say she got bullied. Mm-hmm. Did she express at all how that made her feel?
Yeah, she felt terrible. So,
and this was at what age?
When she was 4. When she was 4. And this is in France. My siblings, my dad and my stepmom all live in France. And so the area where they live is not diverse.
Okay.
And so my little siblings are, you know, the only Black kids at their school. And the little white kids were making fun of Chloe, and they told her that her hair was ugly. They told her that it looked like pieces of shrimp. I mean, they were really mean. And so she came home from school one day crying, saying that she didn't want to go back to school anymore because she was so ashamed of her afro. And that's when I said, no, I have to do something, right? I have to do something to let her know that there is this whole community of Black women with hair just like hers, you know?
Thank God for you doing that, because I'm thinking right now, 4 years old. Mm-hmm. Beloved, do you know what kind of trauma that is for a 4-year-old not to say, I don't want to go back to school, and she doesn't want to go back to school because they're making fun of her hair. Look at this beautiful baby. And she was bullied and being made fun of because of her hair. Look, pardon me for if I should happen to go off on a tangent, but I am of such the belief that you who are looking at this should, if you haven't already, from this day forward, to tell your children how beautiful they are, how absolutely beautiful they are in their natural state. So what you did, tell me about the journey of developing the book.
Yeah, so initially I didn't think it was going to be a whole book like this. I thought it might just be a little pamphlet or something, you know, something small for my little sister, because again, she doesn't see herself represented in her school, in her community, in her neighborhood, any of that. And even among the 4 of us siblings, she also, you know, has the tightest curl pattern. And so I, you know, started photographing and interviewing a few Black women with natural hair, and then I was going to put it together for my sister. But the more interviews I did and the more women I photographed, the more I realized this is actually really fun. I really like photojournalism, and every Black woman has a different hair story. I mean, obviously there's so many similarities and connections between our stories, but everyone's journey is different and inspiring. And I was also feeling really inspired by the women who I was interviewing. And so I decided to keep going, and eventually I got to 101 Black women. And then after that, I went through the publishing process and everything. But it was definitely an incredible journey. I thought I was doing it just for my sister, but I think that it's also for every Black woman or Black girl who's ever felt like she's not enough in her body and her hair. And I also found a greater sense of self-love through writing this book.
Those are powerful words. Let me ask you, you know, writing a book, doing a book, getting it published is a project. Mm-hmm. What is and we jumped right into this, give us a sense of who you are, where you come from, and your background.
Yeah, so my dad is from St. Bart's, which, if anybody doesn't know, it's a teeny island in the French West Indies in the Caribbean. So my dad is Afro-Caribbean, and then my mom is white American. Mm-hmm. And I was born and raised here in Washington, D.C.
Okay, so you're native Washingtonian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and my mom is from D.C. as well. Yeah.
And where'd you go to school? What?
So for kindergarten, I went to Children's Studio School.
Okay.
And then I went to Aiden Montessori, it's a great school, but it's a majority white Montessori school in DC, and that's when I lost all my confidence and I started wanting straight hair and lighter skin. And then for high school, I went to Washington Latin.
So from whence comes your strength, courage, and desire to somewhere along the way? That's not a trajectory that one would think establishing is a strong black consciousness. Where did that come from?
Well, first, I think my mom, even though my mom is white, but she is very, very heavy on anti-racism work. And so ever since I was young, she's been educating me about issues regarding, anti-blackness and racism. And so she really instilled in me this idea, we were talking about earlier before we went live about the one drop rule, and so she always instilled in me, you're a black woman. And so I'm really grateful for that, because I feel like I've always had a strong sense of identity when it comes to me being black. And then also I think that, sometimes when you feel like something is missing, there's this urge to seek it out. And so my dad, growing up, my dad was my only black family member here in the United States, because everyone else was either in the Caribbean or somewhere in Europe, from my dad's side. And so there was sort of, I think, a disconnect. And so I have, especially recently, been really wanting to reconnect with my blackness and my black ancestors, I would say, my black heritage in the Caribbean.
And have you started that process?
I have, yeah. I've been going back much more frequently. I've been spending more time with my grandma, my great-grandma, my cousins, because we have a huge family.
In St. Bart's?
In St. Bart's. Yeah.
What has that meant to you?
It's...
And what has it done for you?
I think it's made me feel more grounded in who I am. It's been a reminder that I come from somewhere, right? That I have this background, and that I carry the strength of my ancestors. Because especially we know in the Caribbean, the things that black people went through. It was just so brutal. And so some of the women who I interviewed made me think about this, because they said, that our ancestors went through so much and they survived so much so that we could be here today. And they gave us the gift of natural hair, of curly hair, right? And so for me, reconnecting with my ancestors has given me a newfound strength too, because if ever I'm struggling, whether that's about my hair, my color, whatever it is, or something completely unrelated, I can go back and think about my ancestors throughout the Caribbean and everything they did so that I could be here today. So
having communicated with 101 black women for this story, these are real people. What's the first thing that comes to mind? One of your chapters is the big chop, going natural. Where did that come from? Where did that title come from?
Yeah, so most of the women who I interviewed had at some point gotten a perm or a relaxer. And the process of going natural for so many of them was just a huge deal, right? Because it really is, especially for women in general, there's often this strong connection that we feel to our hair. And so being able to, find that bravery to cut it off, to go natural, and especially people from certain communities, if you grew up in a family or in a culture where straight hair was, seen as more beautiful, it can be hard to let go of, your straight hair. And some of the women who I interviewed said that they faced a lot of pushback even from their own families sometimes. This one woman, her dad stopped talking to her for a couple months because she went natural. And so that's why I felt like this was a really important chapter to have, and it's the first chapter because it's such a pivotal moment for a lot of the women who I interviewed.
Let me say this, because I want to be fully aware and present as I do these interviews, as I communicate with you, my audience. And I also want to be very transparent. So I can only imagine some of you are watching would be like, okay, wait a minute, what's going on here tonight? You've got a dude who is often mistaken for being a white guy. You've got a person from the Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean, whose mama is white, who's kind of got long, naturally curly hair, and you're talking about black women's hair. Let me just say this, hang in there, because we're going to have a couple of chocolate guests. We're going to have a chocolate sister who is an expert in black women's hair. You'll learn all about her in just a moment. Many of you said when I went public with my concerns about black women not having enough self-esteem in their own natural beauty to rock their natural hair, you said, many of you said, well, if some of y'all brothers would tell us or would let us know, look, y'all, part of the reason why we do it is because of the brothers. They want to be with a white girl, or they want to be with a light girl with long stringy hair. And I also have a gentleman here who is going to address that. So y'all just, give me a little bit of time, hang in there, because we're going to hear different voices on this and about this. How old is Chloe now?
She is 9 now.
So from the time she was 4, when she was being bullied at school and didn't want to go back to school because people were talking about her ugly hair, to now, what kind of changes have you seen in her?
She really loves her hair now. I mean, I think it's always a journey, right? Because these white supremacist beauty standards are constantly being forced upon us. So it is hard to continue that sense of self-love. But, I saw her last summer about a year ago, because, again, we live in different countries. But I saw her about a year ago, and I gave her, a copy of this book when it was published. And she was really excited, and she went through all the pages. And on every single page, she stopped and she said, "Oh, she is so beautiful." And that made me really happy, because there was a time a few years ago before I finished the book that Chloe and I were at this mall in France, and there was actually this billboard of a black woman with an afro. And my sister looked at her and said, "Oh, she's ugly." Chloe said that. And that made me really sad, because Chloe had hair like her, and so I knew that when she called the woman ugly, she was really calling herself ugly. And so now to have her see photos of black women with afros and for her to say they're beautiful, I know that now she sees herself as beautiful too.
Folks, I'm willing to withstand whatever criticism you may have, and I invite you. There's a comment section, after you view what we're talking about, there's a comment section. So I invite you to give me your unvarnished, unfiltered opinion, good, bad, or indifferent. It'll hardly be original, because I've been called everything from the son of God to the son of Satan. So y'all just bring it on. I want to hear your opinions. We invite your feedback. Folks, I told you that we were going to have different voices talking on this subject. And I full well know that it is a subject that is rife with a varying degrees of opinion. And I wanted to bring you different voices, not just the author of My Beautiful Black Hair, Saint Clair Detrick-Jules, but other voices with perhaps similar opinions, perhaps different opinion. We shall see. Sitting at the table now is Shun Pittman. Shun wrote this book, 50 Things Your Hairdresser Wants You to Know, and a Few Things We Don't. Some kind of way we ran across each other's path. Not so long after that experience that I was telling you about, that had to do with the lady telling her preteen kids, black kids, that they could be beautiful if they got this store-bought hair, which saddened me to no end. When I met Shun, I shared that story, and then she started to share many stories with me about things that she has experienced in her many years in the industry. Shun, welcome to the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Excited to be here.
And you and St. Jules have excitedly traded books, and that works for me. Shun, give us a little on your background.
Well, I've been in the beauty industry, Rock, for almost 30 years. I started as a hairstylist, and then...
That was when you were 2 years old, right?
yeah. So then I landed the role as an artistic director for the world's largest salon chain. They had 12,000 salons all over the world, so I worked in the education department, traveling every week across the world, training hairdressers, beauty school instructors, you name it. And that experience really heightened my talent, my education. I would have never been able to afford it on my own. And I got experience with research and development with a lot of pharmaceutical companies that own beauty companies. And from there, I opened my own salon, Clair Detrick-Jules, and
when was that? When did you open Clair Detrick-Jules?
I opened Clair Detrick-Jules in 2015. Yeah, and so just been, you know, riding the wave as an entrepreneur. And during the pandemic, I got the opportunity to finally buckle down and get my book published.
So you said you were in research and development.
That's correct.
So just recently, there have been several articles and TV shows talking about black women's hair. One of the articles that I just read while I was at Howard University for the homecoming weekend was about research that had demonstrated how some of the chemicals that black women are using in their hair were so counterproductive and damaging to the scalp. Are you familiar with that at all?
I am. So actually, researchers at NIH had concluded, they had essentially started a study for sisters. They called it the sister study, and sisters of sisters who had breast cancer. So the sisters that they were studying did not have cancer, but one of the things that they found in common was that a lot of the sisters had relaxed hair. And of those people that had relaxed hair, they surveyed, or they studied 33 some odd thousand women, and about 300, almost 400 I should say, had uterine cancer. And what I'd like to add to this story, because what people are not talking about is it's not the main chemical, sodium hydroxide, that does the straightening, the actual straightening that's associated with the uterine cancer. It's phthalates, which are salts or the esters of lactic acid. It's also cyclosan, which is a derivative. It's not a derivative. It's a preservative, commonly used in cosmetics, not just chemical relaxers. It's in lotions, cold creams, and then silicones. Silicones are what make the hair feel really slippy and silky and soft, and it's those ingredients that are commonly used, they're widely used in the cosmetic industry, that have gotten the backlash because they are toxic. And even more recently, a lot of women with highly textured hair have gone away from the hydroxide-based relaxers. And I will say sodium hydroxide in strong forms can be very caustic, they can burn, but in mild forms you'll find sodium hydroxide in saline solution. It's in lotions because it has smoothing properties. So that chemical, I would say, you know, if used too much, yes, could be toxic. But the common straightening ingredient that clients are gravitating to are these keratin treatments. Those are the ones that the FDA allows to happen in this country. Canada actually, you know, shunned them, but what they actually do,
no pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended. But what they actually do is use heat, like a flat iron, to burn the chemical inside, and it releases fumes. And so that's the one that's carcinogenic, because the fume that gets released is formaldehyde. So, but that's what's on trend now. And they use words like keratin, and keratin is the main component in hair to market, to make people think that it's a healthy alternative to the traditional hydroxide-based relaxers, and that's not the case. Let
me turn to you, St. Clair. Having interviewed the 101 women for your book, My Beautiful Black Hair, 101 natural hair stories from the sisterhood. The people that you interviewed, am I to understand that each of them, when you interviewed them, had natural hair?
Yes, natural hair texture.
Natural hair texture. But prior to that time, had they been using perms, relaxers, and some of the, what sounds like real god-awful stuff that Shun is talking about?
Yeah, a lot of them had gotten relaxers in the past. I was surprised by how few of them had never gotten a relaxer. And a lot of them, you know, it wasn't their decision to get a relaxer. It was their parents who put relaxer in their, you know, in their hair before they were old enough to consent to it. And that's not, you know, negative about the parents. It's just the parents doing what they knew best at the time.
The parents doing what they knew best at the time, because their parents and influences taught them, and then their grandparents taught them. What I want to recommend is the person that did your forward or your introduction. I forget which one it was. Who did your forward?
So Alexandra L. wrote the forward, and then Dr. Afia and Billy Shaka wrote A Brief History of Black Hair in the beginning.
Yes. Say the name again. Look right in, well, that's your camera there.
Yes.
Look right in that camera and give both of those names. And I want to say that I'm asking her to do this because they give a brief history and somewhat of a tutorial about the age-old care of black women's hair and the various things that you need to do. Yes, it takes time. This ain't no microwave stuff that we're talking about. But the history that you will learn from the names that she's getting ready to give you right now will help prepare you for your natural hair care and those of the ones you love. Please give those names again. And look, I'm not here to promote a book for the sake of promoting a book, but we're talking about a subject that is very important. Part of what we're trying to do is dismantle and unravel the horrors and the diabolical schemes of white supremacy. And in order to do so, there are ways in here. There is an expert in here on black hair care. Please try to find it as soon as you can. What are the names again?
So Alexandra L. wrote the foreword, and she writes about her own experiences. And then Dr. Afia and Billy Shaka wrote A Brief History of Black Hair, and she's really great. She is a hairstylist, and she's also a psychologist, and so she actually coined the term psychotherapy, and now she trains others in it as well. And basically, she uses hair as an entry point to talk about mental health with black women. You know, she wears many hats, but that's one of the things that she does with her work. So, you know, she combines it, which I think is really important.
The mere title of your book, Shun, 50 things your hairdresser wants you to know and a few things you don't. First of all, I really do tick off a few very important things that a concerned, compassionate hairdresser, because we know whether it's the barbershop or the hair salon, some people are just in there to use the clips and get the money and get on out. But as someone who is passionate about this, what's a few things you want our viewing audience to know?
Well, the first thing I'd like the viewing audience to know is that beauty school does not prepare the hairdresser to function in the salon. In fact, it's on-the-job training at the consumer's expense. So good hairdressers that are good at what they do, they're good at what they do because they've learned what not to do. And unfortunately, if they have a bad experience with a product, they never go near that product again. They just think the product was bad, not that the product was the wrong product for the right type of hair. And so when the pandemic hit, I saw a huge need. Consumers were flocking to social media to get answers about their hair. And unfortunately, the social media videos, the TikTok and the Instagram tutorials, they're condensed to captivate, you know, their audience. And hair and skin and nails is not a cookie cutter approach. It's not one size fits all. So I saw that there was a market, there was a need to publish a book to give all the gory details to help maximize the salon experience. So in my book, the reader will learn how to find the right hairdresser. They'll learn how to communicate effectively with that hairdresser. They're going to learn the truth about salon services and products. And they're going to learn about hair type and texture versus race.
So, okay. That makes me want to address something. And I'm going to do it by personalizing the situation. So I have granddaughters. I have a granddaughter whose black father married a Mexican American who had long flowing hair, and this particular granddaughter has long flowing hair. And I have a granddaughter whose mama married a brother, and they produced a couple of children. Both of those children, I think you called it short curls, or what did you call it?
Like a tighter curl pattern?
A tighter curl. And I'm going to take it a step further. Both of them have hair. Back in the day, I heard this and said the hair is like a mailman. Every nap's got its own route. Oh, they got some nappy hair. Now, one has long flowing, silky looking hair. The other one's got nappy hair. One is not bad and one is not good. Get rid of that terrible, self-destructive language. Oh, she got good hair. Oh, they got bad hair. Clean hair is good hair. Unless it's dirty, matted up, raggedy, with some bugs in it, it ain't bad hair. It's natural hair. And don't let the continuation of this miseducation that you have received allow you to speak that self-destructive language. Shun, what are some of the things that your hairdresser doesn't want you to know? That's in your title.
Well, so that is specifically to really challenge hairdressers to get the education that they so need. I feel like an informed consumer will challenge that hairdresser that won't get the education. But for instance, I have a section in my book that talks about relaxers. And here's the thing that, like, I think Chris Rock had a movie called Good Hair. And one of the things that helped I was cringing when I was watching the movie is that there's several things. It's so complex. My brain is racing right now, but I'll start with what has me cringing. That it was so accepted that the relaxer is supposed to burn or be uncomfortable. And it's like, you gotta be kidding me that people are paying for abuse. You know, they're not supposed to. Relaxers can irritate the scalp through poor preparation or poor application. Poor preparation is going to be the client's fault. Also, the stylist's fault for not informing the client on how to prepare. But poor application is all on the stylist's fault. So that's something that hairdressers wouldn't want me sharing, right? Because let's say a client goes into a salon for that service and she starts to experience irritability. Now she's going to blame the stylist. What do? You're not applying it correctly. I have gained clients because, honestly, no relaxer manufacturer tells you to put the product on, and when it starts burning, it's time to take it off. Yeah. They give a time limit. And unfortunately, most hairdressers, they started working with that chemical in the kitchens at home before they got into the salon. I have one student, it was an all-white class that I was teaching, and one student said to me, I'm really afraid to learn how to do this because every time I turn on Judge Judy, it's always a lawsuit. You know, I wish I could just sit in a black salon and really learn. And I'm like, well, that's not the case because a lot of the damage is happening in the black salon. Yeah,
yeah. So, folks, look, I want to say this because it's something that I've thought about and I think it's relevant to this discussion. And that is, not so long ago, the sense, I want you to think back. I want you to think back particularly. Think of the Temptations. Think of Nat King Cole. Think of Chubby Checker. Think of James Brown. Think of Little Richard. Their standard of beauty was also impacted by this Europeanized standard of beauty. That's why they would fry, dye their hair, try to lie it to the side, and you saw these processes. Of course, if you saw the movie Malcolm X, you saw him burning his skull and because his brain had been burned by this false sense of beauty of others until he found himself. So our men have been victimized by the same thing. And I think you would look at them and wonder, oh, why would they do that? Sisters, please, come home. Come home to your own natural beauty. St. Clair, 101 stories you have in here. They are so absolutely fascinating. Is there a couple that just sort of stands out to you that grabbed you and continue to impact you to this day?
Yeah, there's one woman who I interviewed who actually, she and I went to middle school and high school together, so I'd known her for many years when I interviewed her. And she shared with me that when she was younger, at one point she decided, hey, I see that some of my friends are going natural, maybe I would like to go natural as well. Maybe I would like to try it. And her family is Afro-Dominican. And so she told that to her mom. She said, I think I want to, try my natural hair. And her mom got upset and forcibly placed the relaxing product on her daughter's scalp.
At what age was the...
I'm not totally sure how old she was. Now as an adult, she obviously has since gone natural, and now she's been inspiring her mom to embrace more Afrocentric hairstyles as well, like braids and stuff like that, that her mom wouldn't do before. But that story always stands out to me just because there's so much violence in these white supremacist beauty standards, and it's not, again, and I'm not judging the mom because she was genuinely doing what she thought was going to be best for her daughter in terms of beauty standards, in terms of opportunities, educational in the future, you know, work opportunities. But the damage that's done to us.
I remember the title of a book, Miseducation of the Negro. Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, yes. So folks, look, some of the pushback that I got when I first went public about this was, and this came from women. This was the public feedback that I got came from black women who said, well, a lot of the reason why we feel the pressure and the need to do this kind of thing with our hair to approximate someone else's beauty standard is because you men, so men, women, get your man, bring him up, bring him right in front of the TV set right there, right now. Men, those of you who aren't strong enough in your own black identity to understand the unfair pressure that you put on black women because your standard is somebody else's standard, is a Europeanized standard. Check your own dumb ass. Check your own misinformed ass. Because you contribute to the lack of health and the lack of self-esteem to your queens. Men.
It's self-hate.
Shun just said quietly, it's self-hate. And I implore us all to rise above that self-hate. One household at a time, one sisterhood at a time. There's 101 sisters here in this book who tell that story. And in Shun's book, she talks about your ability to rise above that self-hate. Joining us now is a brother who has had over a good period of time a very strong feeling about black women and their hair. Kymone Freeman joins us now. As promised, I told you that Kymone Freeman would be joining us. I often hear Kymone introduce himself as Kymone Freeman, angry black man in therapy. Maybe we'll get into that in just a moment. But he joins me with my guest, the author of My Beautiful Black Hair, St. Clair Detrick-Jules, who wrote the book, My Beautiful Black Hair, 101 Natural Hair Stories from the Sisterhood. You just heard Shun Pittman. And as Shun was leaving, she wanted to make sure that she in no way was misunderstood as being anti-going to the salon. She just doesn't want you to get addicted to some of the counterproductive, unhealthy practices of too many salons. So that's something that I promised her that I would repeat because it was important to her. Kymone Freeman, welcome to the Rock Newman Show 2.0.
Always a pleasure.
All right. Kymone is also the co-founder and co-owner of We Act Radio. This show, the Rock Newman Show 2.0, is being filmed and produced at We Act Radio Studios. When I say produced, I have to acknowledge that it is being produced by a producer and a talent and an editor, director extraordinaire, my good friend, my pal, my buddy, Avis J. Savista. You'll probably see his name up in lights in Hollywood in the not too distant future, as talented as he is. So Kymone, I was talking to St. Clair and I was talking to Shun Pittman, and I opined that once I talked about this subject, black women's hair, publicly, and said that seeing young girls buying long store-bought hair and a mama telling her daughter that she could be beautiful if she bought that hair, part of the feedback that I got through Facebook and social media was some of the reason that we do this is because we feel the pressure from the black man that if we don't have straight hair and look like them, that the black man may not be interested. And your opinion is?
Well, my opinion is I don't know too many black women historically that submit to the whims of a man, doing something for a man. But I'm sure that there are cases of it because Hugh Masekela, the late great jazz icon Hugh Masekela, South Africa's own, he wouldn't even take pictures with sisters who didn't have natural hair. And he said that women who wore those track weaves and hair extensions, those styles, men was vicariously wearing them because that is the women that they preferred. And we've seen many cases of that. I just don't think that too many strong women submit to the whims of men. So I always want to throw that in there.
Let's unpack that comment that you attribute to Hugh Masekela. Would you repeat that?
Hugh Masekela, to his dying days, refused to be photographed with any African woman who did not wear their hair naturally. And he caught all kinds of flack because of that. Yeah. And in my interview with him on Weird Radio, he said that he didn't want to leave the men off the hook because he felt the men was vicariously wearing those westernized ideology or beauty standards because that is what they was preferring. And those were the women that they was selecting.
St. Clair, did any of the women that you interviewed get into that subject at all, feeling a sense that in part to please men in a past time that they might have straightened or worn their hair more towards a European style?
It came up a bit, not too frequently, although I know that it is a big deal, you know, these questions of desirability for women when it comes to our hair. But a couple of the women did bring it up. One woman talked about, you know, how even, you know, she's natural, but she said that she used to, you know, decide which natural hairstyles to wear based on the feedback that she had gotten from men, right? So whether that's, you know, like finger coils or like a wash and go or, you know, whatever it was, she said that she used to, you know, use the opinions of men to decide how she was going to wear her hair in its natural state. But luckily, you know, she said she's out of that stage now. But I think it is something that, you know, even if we say, you know, no, I'm not going to, you know, I don't care about desirability or any of that. I think that for women, it really is, you know, constantly being impressed upon us, you know, women of all backgrounds, that we need the approval of men. And so I think it can be hard sometimes to sort of get that out of our minds and to fully focus on ourselves and how we feel our strongest and most authentic selves.
Do you understand that, black man?
Absolutely. I just don't know too many sisters are going to take my opinion on how to wear their hair because I've been told just the opposite many times because I'm actually trying to encourage the natural hair. And so I've not been successful in any relationship I've ever had of changing a woman's hairstyle. So I prefer the naturals, but
you've encouraged
to my detriment, yes,
black women to go to their natural selves.
Absolutely.
Why?
Well, I guess we all have a personal story. I remember as a child, I was in my grandmother's bedroom, and back in the day, they had the little mannequin heads where they put the wigs on. And as a child's mind, I thought wigs was for women who didn't have hair at all. And so I see my grandmother with her wig off, and she's brushing it out, and she puts it on the mannequin head. And I see that she has braids in her hair. She has plenty of hair. And I said, Grandma, you have hair. Why are you wearing the wig? So, oh, I ain't got time to be fooling around with my nappy-ass hair. Hate this nappy hair. My grandma wore a wig her entire adult life because she hated her own hair.
Ooh.
And that singed me. as a child, I knew something was wrong. And as I grew older and seeing women walking around doing all kinds of stuff, I'm like, nah. I recognized what it was. It was a product of white supremacy, where our sisters, well, all of us basically, had been bombarded to the westernized ideology of what beauty's supposed to be. And if we're going to decolonize our minds, we have to also do it completely. You know, and I think what you're doing right here is time, because the Crown Act, federal standard, just passed this year, and I want to read something from you. The Crown Act, which stands for Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair. Dove was a big supporter of this. But you go to the Dove site.
Dove, as in Dove soap?
The Dove soap. That white Dove soap. Yeah. Shout out to Dove. But you go to their website, and there's no natural hair on the website. It's extensions, you know. But they had some shocking statistics up there. It says a black woman is 80% more likely to change her natural hair to meet social norms or expectations at work. And this is what really broke my heart. This says 1 out of 2 black children have experienced discrimination as early as 5 years old, and the impact can last a lifetime. So
St. Jules wrote the book, My Beautiful Black Hair.
It's breaking the chain, breaking the cycle, and stopping the bush.
And her inspiration, in large part, was her 4-year-old sister who had been bullied in a predominantly white classroom, saying that her hair, she didn't want to go back to school because she felt her hair was ugly. And when she told that story, I just simply felt the trauma of what it must have been like for this 4-year-old baby to be so shattered, because that's what that is. That's shattering psychologically, mentally. It affects the body. It affects the spirit. And that's what she said. I don't want to go back to school because my hair is so ugly. And folks, I don't have any apology whatsoever for doing this show or for taking the position that I am taking, because I believe that we must uproot ourselves. We must uproot our mentalities from that sense that in order to be our authentic selves, in order to be our best selves, that we must look like someone else's standard of beauty. Again and again and again and again and again, I implore you, men and women, mamas and daddies, brothers and sisters, grandpas and uncles, please think about this and start the process in your own home of turning this around, so another 4-year-old kid doesn't come back in and feel as if there's something less than beautiful about themselves. Start it from the cradle and take it to the grave.
That's right.
Say it loud to your child that she's black and she's proud, and he is also. Thank you for joining us today on the Rock Newman Show. I invite all of your comments and feedback. Until the next time, go in peace and love.